It's useful to interpret history so we can identify ways that it becomes relevant in our life. If we think that the human race has evolved to a place where it learns lessons from history and doesn't repeat mistakes, that's an interesting concept. Just look at the news. So we have evolved in terms of enlightenment. We understand things today about the human experience that people didn't understand going back 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago. We've evolved far from the theistic communities governed by pastoral leadership teams. We're now a global, international race of independent, free-speaking, liberated individuals who will say and do and live our lives however we want, whenever we want, regardless of the consequences. As long as we're not breaking the law, we're all right. But here's the thing. Even these days, the law is really only the law as long as it's politically correct, like most things. So, let's now look at the history of NLP. The founding idea of Neuro-Linguistic Programming was initially to model successful psychotherapists. Now, I've covered most of this information already, but I just want to kind of merge it all together into one flow of ideas. Bandler and John Grindler used this idea, modelling successful psychotherapists, as a starting point for NLP around about 1972. By modelling and by studying and observing the transformational works of Virginia Satir, as I mentioned, she was one of the pioneers of systematic family therapy, Fritz Perls, the founding father of Gestalt therapy, and Milton Erickson, who's been referred to as the grandfather of hypnotherapy. Not the weird hypnotherapy where people are doing crazy things on the stage, but the kind of hypnotherapy that actually makes a real profound impact in the quality of people's thinking and in their lives. So studying excellence wasn't a new thing for these gentlemen. It wasn't that studying excellence was created by Bandler and Grindler. It was just they, for the first time, packaged the study into one body of ideas. The body of ideas that NLP is today is very far removed from the body of ideas that NLP was going back around about 50 years ago in its initial conceptualization. All right. So I think probably one of the first guys who studied human excellence was Abraham Maslow. You might have heard of Abraham Maslow before and his hierarchy of needs. This was a model back in 1943 that was used to propose how people grow and develop in life. It was used to understand human motivation, the basic idea being that human beings are only motivated in pursuing and ascertaining those things that they perceive themselves as not having. So human motivation, from Maslow's perspective, begins with our basic physiological needs, i.e. food, water, clothing, shelter, warmth. If we don't have these things, as it was back in pastoral times, we'll die. So of course, human beings who don't have those things will sometimes act and behave animalistically to ascertain and acquire these things. Some people will never acquire these basic physiological needs, therefore will never become more evolved in their thinking or in their behaviour. But if we develop some sort of strategy that doesn't just allow us to acquire our basic physiological needs, but actually sustain these needs being met, then we evolve up the motivational hierarchy. We become driven more by security, perhaps safety, getting some savings in the bank, some insurance policies, perhaps a mortgage paid off, a secure job or a business, some sort of residual income stream, something like this. But what would happen if we have that in place? Well, once that is in place, we're no longer motivated by it, so we become perhaps more focused on relationships. I mean, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have anyone to share it with, then it becomes quite meaningless, doesn't it? So what Maslow promoted and suggested was that beyond physiological needs and safety needs come our social needs, our need to connect meaningfully with other people throughout society at large, in business, intimately, socially, whatever. But let's just say now that we have those needs met. Well, what next? For some people, pride, I want to see my name in the spotlights. I want to be seen as significant. I want to make a name for myself. I want to build a reputation at whatever cost. Doesn't matter so much. But then some human beings will reach a stage of life where they actualize. Self-actualization, kind of like a state of personal enlightenment, realizing that regardless of how much or how little I have, I still am. There is nothing that I can get in life that can add anything to who I am or that can take anything away from who I am. I just am, whether people like me or whether people loathe me. I still remain. So, an interesting idea. Abraham Maslow sought to understand self-actualization by modelling and studying over 60 people who he perceived as being self-actualized. Right, now, what the criteria was to become self-actualized back then, I'm not quite sure. If you ever discover this, please fling me an email and let me know. I would love to find out. Now, the idea of modelling effective people was an outcome of his hierarchy of needs that we've just explained within the 5 steps of human development. In 1961, if you're with me, this focus on human potential led to the dawn of humanistic psychology. Today, respected as one of the key schools of psychological thought. Very far removed from Wilhelm Wundt back all of those years earlier when he asked the question, well, is there a connection between the human mind and the human body? Let us study human behaviour and see if we can understand it slightly better. And the only reason Wilhelm Wundt sought to understand human behaviour was because all of those years earlier, John Locke had said that the mind and the body are separate. I guess it became convenient at some point along the way for there to be a connection between the two. All right, which leads us to where we're at today, kind of. Humanistic psychology, referred to as the third force in psychology and an alternative to psychoanalysis, which was the school of thought conceptualized by Sigmund Freud, who some people would refer to as the founding father of whacked out ideas. Some people refer to him as a genius. Now let's look at NLP, because all of that history brings us to where we're at today, all right? If we want to become effective in a craft, it's good for us to understand where a craft has evolved from, all right? Remember, ideas build upon ideas, knowledge builds upon knowledge, and NLP wasn't all of the ideas, all of the truths, even everything that I'm sharing with you. I'm not creating this stuff. It's stuff that I'm sharing that I've learned along the way. Many ideas I've borrowed from other people, I've merged together, and I've created something that's just a concoction of all the ideas that I've picked up throughout my lifetime to date. So in the beginning, Bandler and Grinder, right? We've got a picture of Grinder here, looking very smart. The last slide was Bandler. They were interested in 2 things. Thing number 1, what makes psychotherapists, well, the psychotherapist previously mentioned, Virginia Satir, Fritz Perls, Milton Erickson, what made them so unique? What made them so effective? What made them get the results and the outcomes that they were getting? And the second question, or the second area of interest, was in what ways can their specialisms be learned and modelled by other people? Can excellence be duplicated? So yeah, of course, it's a brand new field of study. Not brand new as in no one had ever looked at it before, but this was a new expression of it, all right? So since the early days, NLP has developed in the following 4 ways. Now, I am teaching NLP in our way, all right? See if you can identify which one it is. So initially there was NLP Pure. I think I've already mentioned this. This was the first wave. The original NLP started in 1972, officially around about 50 years ago now, with the theme of success and enthusiasm. All right? Driven, underpinned by Bandler and Grinder, understanding personal excellence, human motivation, studying great thinkers such as Abraham Maslow, Virginia Satir, Milton Erickson, Fritz Perls. All right? But this was just a starting point. As with all bodies of ideas, all fields of study, everything has to start somewhere. So back then, of course, it was limited research, but it has evolved since then. Wave 2 NLPT was referred to as the second wave by a gentleman named Robert Dilts. All right, he actually was the gentleman who has defined these 4 waves. Now, interestingly enough, the second wave of NLP was based in application in psychotherapy. NLP in psychotherapy began in 1989 with the theme Health and Joy of Living, led by Robert Dilts. All right, so he defined these 4 waves and he initiated 2 of them, which was just fascinating. So, health and joy of living. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. It's fine, but it's very different from success and enthusiasm. Success and enthusiasm is centered around motivation, accomplishment, getting things done, creating new things, whereas health and joy of living is more about living in the moment. How do we become more appreciative of what we have than focus on what we don't have? So it's definitely not undermining the wave, but what it does highlight and demonstrate how the second wave adopted a very different perspective and a very different agenda from the first. So then the third wave evolves. NLPs. Who came up with these terms? I am not quite sure, but it was referred to and is referred to as the third wave. Application in spirituality. All right, spirituality and personal growth. Now, spirituality isn't a term that I would commonly use. Bearing in mind, we all assign different meanings onto different terms. All words are just labels. Spirituality for me, if someone says I'm a spiritual person, based on my past experiences, has sometimes meant a person being a little bit woo-woo, up in the clouds. I have had conversations with people who speak to angels, who've danced with the devil, and everything in between. And while I'm not undermining or dismissing anything, I can only relate to that which I can relate to. And I most certainly have not danced with the devil or tiptoed through the tulips with angels. So, this was the third level of NLP, getting connected with ourselves, getting connected in spirit, establishing who we are, growing an identity, growing and establishing and considering what the purpose and the meaning of life is, which just simply brought a whole new dimension into the field of study. So as you can see now, it's becoming more holistic, it's becoming more balanced. We're looking at success, enthusiasm, motivation, accomplishment. Now we're looking at health, mental and emotional well-being. We're looking at peace, joy of living. We're now looking at spirituality, personal growth, the meaning of life. Then NLP psychology became the fourth wave. The scientific research of NLP launched in 2006 with a research recognition project which inspired other forms of NLP research. Now, I've not really gone beyond this, to be honest with you. Reason being is because from a teacher's perspective, what my agenda isn't is to do research to justify or explain my teachings, right? What I've always sought to deliver are teachings based upon experience. I believe I'm an advocate of experience-led teaching, not academia-led teaching, if that makes sense. All right, so what I'm saying is that what you're experiencing right now might very well be the fifth wave of NLP, the commonsensical approach, bringing it all together. Whilst I fully acknowledge some of Bandler and Grundler's earlier concepts, I fully acknowledge and embody and, completely endorse some of Dilt's work and some of the other contributors, but it's still not complete. And even by the time I'm finished, it's still not going to be complete, which I guess leaves opportunity for everyone else, including you. So listen, this is just a trip down history lane, not to enlighten you so much, but just to give you a grounded understanding of where NLP has come from, how we have evolved in our thinking as a human species over the last 1,000 or so years, which more than anything else should give you a little bit of hope that regardless of where you're at in life right now, things are going to change consistently forever.